Welcome, boxing fans, to another episode of Boxing 396. Today I'm in West Philadelphia at the Paul Robeson House with Vernoca Michaels, the First Lady of Boxing, owner of the legendary Blue Horizon. This woman is so remarkable, I just felt we had to sit down and talk with her. So here we are. Welcome, Ms. Michael.
Thank you, George. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
Okay, we're at the Paul Robeson House. Tell me
Yes.
about your attachment to the great Paul Robeson.
Well, when I was a child, my father and mother and Paul, his sister, and his brother were all very, very close friends. And in fact, I lived right across the street here.
Okay.
And I really became the runner or the gopher because I was available to do a lot of things with Aunt Marion and also for Uncle Paul. Once I got my license, of course, it was my responsibility to do some driving and all to appointments and other things like that.
We have a lot of young people, and I know about Paul Robeson. Chris knows about Paul Robeson. Tell the young viewers the significance of Paul Robeson, athlete, scholar, you name it. This
Absolutely. He was very significant because he went to Princeton in the time where, of course, African Americans did not. And he excelled above and beyond. He was a great scholar. He was their greatest athlete at the time. He had quite a number of letters that he had acquired. And being a scholar, he was, of course, accepted into the highest honor societies there at Princeton. And he graduated valedictorian of Princeton. And so he had a very, very good education. His father, of course, insisted on all the children having a good education. He lost his mother when he was young. She died in a fire, so it was primarily his father who was raising him. But he got some of that thrust from his father because his father was an activist at the time also. And then, of course, he went on to Columbia to acquire his law degree. And that was, again, something significant at that time. He did join a law firm, but of course they wouldn't even accept doing his work. In fact, the secretaries wouldn't accept his dictation at all. But that did not stop him because his wife was the one who really was the backer of him going into the arts. And of course, as you well know, he became probably one of the greatest singers, actors of his time and toured the world. And of course, he was before the civil rights movement.
Right.
So his activism really brought him to the attention of the United States government, in particular MacArthur, who eventually took his passport, so that he went from a man who was making thousands and thousands of dollars to a couple of $100.
Right.
And of course that was sad because he was bringing to the attention of the world some of the issues that people weren't really aware of when it came to race and came to other issues in not only the United States but the world.
One of the interesting facts that I found out about Paul Robeson is he played in the NFL while at Columbia Law School, which is unbelievable, going to law school and playing professional football.
Right, exactly. And of course that helped keep him going. And he was good at what he did. He was good at everything that he did, to tell you the truth.
Okay.
He just was a person who excelled in all areas.
And when we spoke earlier, you referred to him as Uncle Paul.
Yes.
You guys were pretty close.
Yeah, our families were very tight.
Okay.
Very tight. Right. And all I had to do, as I said, I lived right across the street, and so I was always popping in to do whatever. Back in those days, you didn't ask why when your parents or your extended family members needed something. You were there to offer your assistance.
I know a lot of our viewers are wondering when we're going to get into the boxing. Of course, everybody know you as the owner of the legendary Blue Horizon, the #1 venue for boxing in the world.
Yes.
The Blue Horizon. Many people don't know Miss Michael, but we share a similar background. Not on the same level, but a similar background. I worked in public accounting at PricewaterhouseCoopers. You came from Laventhal in Warbank,
Yes.
where you were the National Director
right.
of Human Resources.
Yes.
Talk to me, how did you transition from Laventhal to owning the #1 venue for boxing?
Well, I have had a number of positions which I enjoyed, and that was one of them. I did leave Laventhal and Harwath, and I thought I left it in a timely era because I saw some problems with it.
Okay.
And being the only African American at that level in any CPA firm, many didn't want to really listen to why I thought the firm was getting into difficulty, which they did.
They did.
But the reason why they didn't want to listen was because they thought I really didn't know what I was talking about. But why I knew was because they pushed me out into their local offices throughout the United States, where many of the managing partners didn't want to see me.
Mm-hmm.
So they would, a lot of times, have me to meet with managers and other people who were willing to talk about what was going on in the firm. So when I would come back and say, you need to begin to listen to some of your staff and really hear what they're saying about what's happening, that of course shed light on some of the managing partners that they didn't want to see. So I moved on and started my own.
Move on is humble, Miss Michael. You got off the Titanic before it hit the iceberg.
Absolutely, absolutely. And as they say, took my money and ran and set up my own company.
Okay.
And while I was doing my own company, they asked the city of Philadelphia through family planning, asked me to come and receive a position that would allow the city of Philadelphia and the region to acquire the Ryan White dollars.
Okay.
It was just at the time that AIDS was being recognized. So I was able to establish the Philadelphia AIDS Consortium.
Okay.
That allowed us to distribute money through the region for AIDS. And then, as I said, having this consulting company, I was then asked by a friend of mine to take over a failing organization in Delaware County that related to domestic violence.
Okay.
And what happened? The OJ trial.
Right.
And so through that effort, one of the persons that knew me well was Pat Shiraki.
Okay.
And Pat came and asked me if I would come on Channel 3 because they needed to talk about the issue of domestic violence. And so I did. She told her manager, guaranteed her manager that she would get me on. And I was really reluctant, but I did go on. TV has been something that I've always done, but this particular issue was so serious. And so from then on, it was just like it just blossomed, and I got calls from all the media from New York all the way down to Washington to come on and talk about the whole issue of domestic violence. I did it one reason because many people felt domestic violence was a black issue.
Okay.
And this opened up the minds to people to recognize this issue had no relationship to one race, one ethnic group. It was an equal opportunities issue that America had not really faced.
So this is 1994.
That's
so you're
correct.
talking about domestic violence.
That's right.
How do you go from domestic violence to legalized violence in the square circle?
Okay, well, in being in domestic violence, I was appointed to the governor's task force.
Oh, okay.
And we traveled back and forth to Harrisburg for those meetings. And my now business partner was head of Women Against Abuse.
Okay.
And she would always, on our trips, talk about this building that she had been to. Loved this building. wonderful, this building. I had never seen it. I'd worked in the area, but I guess I just didn't pay any attention to it. And she wanted to buy it. And I said one day in a joke form, I said, if I give you the money, will you shut up?
Mhm.
And really, that's how it got started. And so, without seeing it, without knowing anything about it, I put up some of the money for.
This was 1994?
This was 1994.
94, you guys buy the Blue Horizon.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. And that's when the issues started.
Okay.
People were very upset that African Americans had been able to acquire that particular property. And so for over 20 years, even till today, people still are very upset, and we have had more difficulty fighting a battle. I should have been in the ring. I probably would have won every match. And I've been somewhat successful because we were able to do a $3.5 million renovation on the
Right.
building. We were able to, through our efforts, under our ownership, it became the #1 boxing venue in the world. We beat out Madison Square Garden, Caesar's Palace, MGM Grand, and Atlantic City Convention Center. As you know, we had one of the highest issues for sale of the Sports Illustrated with 18 pages. I remember that I had to go to the president of the publishing company just in order to get a copy of it. They went so fast and all. And so one of the things that people didn't realize on the other side of the coin was that I was associated with some colleges and universities.
Right.
And so we were able to establish one of the most unique learning centers in the country. We had 15 colleges here in the area. We had Harvard and Hampton as our 2 outside schools. We had 13 high schools, 3 training programs, and the court-appointed people. And we have now served over 18,000 through that learning center.
Okay, so let's back up. You buy the Blue Horizon in 1994. A lot of people think boxing's the only thing that's going on through there.
That's
You have
correct.
all these colleges, because I've been in there,
Yes.
and all these tutorial programs associated with these Ivy League schools, including Temple University, which is right up the street,
Penn, University of
and
Penn,
University of Penn,
Drexel,
Drexel,
Sal, you name it.
LaSalle, you name it. They're providing tutorials, tutoring for all these children.
Well, they were
in
tutoring.
Philadelphia.
It was actually internships.
They're doing
because
internships.
what people didn't realize was that they see boxing in the ring. They don't recognize that boxing is a business.
Right.
So you need areas such as MIS, e-commerce,
Okay.
marketing, management, you name the disciplines. That's what it takes to conduct a business. And so the schools liked it. I did not have students that came to me and said, Ms. Michael, I want to be a part of your program. The university sent those students, and we were never at a want for students, because those students came in and functioned like staff.
Okay.
And so when they graduated, they were able to use those placements on their resumes because they actually had to do work. Now, I would tell students when they came in, I don't want you to function at the height of this ceiling. I want you to function at the height of the roof of this building. So my expectations were very high of the students. And of course, the byproduct for them was that they would be involved and see the fights and get to
Okay.
meet not only the fighters, but we had, as you know, people from all walks of life, all stations,
Okay.
coming to the Blue to see the Blue. And I always made it a policy that my young people should be exposed to all of these important people who came.
Okay. You're promoted, Ms. Michael, you buy it in 94. You have all these students who are interns,
Yes,
but at some point, you decided to start promoting.
that's correct.
You were running it out to promoters who,
Right.
Russell Pulse Boxing Promotion, different
Yes.
promotion. Then you got into the promotion
Well,
business yourself.
I
What
got-
year was that, 98 or 2002?
98. 98 was when I got into the promotion because people who were coming in wanted to tell me what to do
Okay.
and didn't want me to be a part of discussions and things like that. This is my house. And I had a right to sit at the table at my house, but yet they were trying to deny me an opportunity to do that. So I thought the best way to do it was to really get them at their own game. Because when I mentioned becoming a promoter, the answer was I couldn't. And I said, why not? And they said, well, there are no African American female boxing promoters. But I was a product of the 60s. And I said to myself, so what? I can do this.
Miss Michaels, you have to understand this is America. Your gender and your color disqualifies you to be a boxing promoter.
Well, but my parents didn't say that to me. My parents always told me back then that I could have been the president of the United States if I so wanted to. And so, because I was raised by individuals in the surrounding of company that always told me what I could do, and that was whatever I wanted to do, I just took it upon myself to move forward on that and become a promoter. So I set up 3 boxing companies: Blue Horizon Boxing Inc., Blue Horizon Boxing LLC, and White Collar Boxing, and that was the boxing for people who didn't want to really get into professional boxing or anything, but maybe were training in your gym. And then all of a sudden they say, boy, I would like an evening where I could just get in the ring in front of people and, knock it around. So that was a group for them. And it really worked. One of the things, and this is how I got to know you, I was upset that unless you were in the right company, knew the right people, that people were saying, well, I can't get in the ring because I'm not well connected. Well, when I met people like yourself and other people, you would tell me, well, I got this great kid and all they need is a chance.
Darryl Jones.
Absolutely, absolutely. And all I wanted to do was give people a chance. I mean, all my life people have given me an opportunity. I didn't get to where I got to by myself. There were people who were always there to help me up the rung of the ladder. And so I saw it important for me to be a part of helping young people. And as you know, a lot of the young people that I worked with who came to me for boxing, they had to take elocution lessons.
No,
they had to.
We know. I want to flashback, Miss Michael. June 1st, 2007.
Yes.
I was writing for Boxing Beat. I had been writing for them for about a year. Mm-hmm. It was my first time covering a fight at the Blue Horizon. I believe Harry Yorgi was in the main event. Mm-hmm. Hank Lundy, who fights on the 27th of February in Madison Square Garden fighting Terrence Crawford. Mm-hmm. He was in his 6th or 7th fight against Reggie Sanders, who fought Floyd Mayweather in Floyd Mayweather's second fight. And I came in that night at the Blue Horizon, and I remember coming in because there weren't any African American reporters.
That's right.
I was the only one covering the fight. I came in, and I was sitting at ringside, and you came and got me, and you said, sit next to me. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay. Well, Miss Michaels put me in a seat next to her.
The reason, first of all, that's my house. Right. And I think you found out later that it, in fact, was my house.
Oh, I knew ahead of time it was your house, but I've never been to a fight where a promoter goes, sit next to me. That was the first time.
Well, I felt that I needed total representation by the press. And when I kind of heard that you were being denied a seat, it was just like when I wanted to sit at the table. I felt that you needed to be at the table because here we were in an environment where the ownership was black. Many of the boxers were black. So why not have a black press person?
I thought
and that became important to me, and it stayed important to me until I left, and I think you knew that.
But Miss Mike, I didn't see me being denied a seat that night because I was black. I thought it was because I went to Harvard.
Well, that too. That too.
But
no, it was because you walked in there with a suit on.
And Now you have a point.
And a lot of people are not used to us coming, we might say coming right. And so to that end, when they see us being different, wearing braids as you do, me with this and being an older woman, because remember now, I was in my late 40s when I came into this profession. And so being that age, I was deemed the mother. Didn't have a problem with that, because one of the things that it did when they did refer to me is that it gave me status to the extent that people respected me, and I respected them in return, and also they understood that I did care about them, not in just a professional sense, but I cared about those boys. And if you'll remember, I used to maintain a closet upstairs where I would have about 30 suits, usually 45 shirts, 85 ties.
I remember you used to take the fighters down there and for your press conference, put on a jacket,
Absolutely.
put on a suit.
You didn't come with the white shirt, t-shirt,
Pants hanging down.
No. And then I would also work on them with their etiquette, because they would go out to these banquets with me. And I would also work on them with financial management, because so many of them came to me telling me that their promoters and trainers and managers, were not giving them their fair share. Well, you'll remember with your fighters, you nor anybody else could come in and get their pay.
Right.
They signed their contracts in front of me.
You paid the fighters.
And I paid the fighters directly. Now, what they did with that money, because I would tell them, I would say, this is your money. I remember Don King sent me a young man, and he came in, and we, of course, even when you were out of town, you had to come in and sit with me and talk to me sometime. And I found out that he had met a young lady coming into Philadelphia. And when he got his pay that night, he was going to go out and have a good time. But I asked him about his family, and he told me that he had lived with his mother, who supported him through his efforts to become a fighter. And she did days work. And that stuck with me. And I remember he came in to get his pay from my staff. And they came upstairs and told me he was upset because he was not getting his full pay. I would pay him in check form. You can cash it, but I paid you in check form because I like running record. And I came downstairs and he said that they would only give him a little piece of his money in cash. And I said, that's all you're getting. I said, you made enough money tonight for your mother to get up off her knees. I said, now I'm putting this in check form so that your mother, and you can go to the bank on Monday morning. And I said, I'm calling your house to your mother to see if she got any of this money on Monday. And I did. And I had to get on mother too, because mother was saying, well, that's all right. I said, no, it's not all right. This is a teaching moment for you and your son, that you have supported him all these years. He's now making enough money to support you.
One of the things that people missed on my first night covering the fight at the legendary Blue Ride, June 1st, 2007, it missed so many people. Robert Johnson, the billionaire founder of BET, sat at ringside.
Right.
And I think I was the only person who recognized him. He sat there and he stayed the entire show. No security. Well, if they were there, they blended in. He sat at ringside and stayed for the entire show.
That's right. And we had that level of person. It was always amazing to me, the people who would come to the legendary Blue Horizon
Tony Danza.
North Philadelphia.
Tony Danza was there one night.
We had them all. And it was interesting, as you mentioned. None of them had to come with bodyguards. They just sat, they enjoyed, and usually they would always come back. And it was fun, for me in particular, to watch people that I knew who were of a certain status come and just enjoy themselves. And it was also of interest for people to recognize, oh, those level of people come to the legendary Blue Horizon in North Philadelphia? Yes. They weren't scared.
No.
But here you had other people who lived right in the area. Am I going to be all right, or whatever the case may be? No, these people came. These people came and enjoyed themselves. Had a lot of presidents from colleges that were active box fans. I had a lot of lawyers, doctors, very important people. And one of the things that I early learned from my shows was that if I changed the dress code, that and opened the sale of the tickets up to the general public, you didn't know who you were sitting next to.
That's true.
Because once changing the dress code, instead of people coming in dressed like you, and other people coming in not dressed, and that feeling of, oh, I can't be associated. It was just a relaxed atmosphere, and everybody shared in the same thing, and that was their love for boxing.
Let's talk about, we're going to cover when the Blue Rising closed, but I just want to bring up the topic of women in boxing. I interviewed Brittany Rogers, who interned with you. She now has her own promotional company. We spent some time talking about women in boxing,
Yes.
because the U.S. is so behind the times in
Yes.
everything. Women in the ring, we don't see women fighters on television.
It's true.
And to me, I try to say this, and some of the promoters, I don't care if they get upset, and I say this, women are not on television because men are chauvinistic
Well, that's
and
true.
stupid.
That's true. That's true. What I got when I started promoting women was actually the men telling me, well, we don't like women in
When you say
boxing.
the men, I've never heard fighters say that. I've always trained with women in the gym,
Mm-hmm.
and we have
Mm-hmm.
no
Well,
issues.
it wasn't the boxers who objected. It was those who were above the boxers who objected. And I said to them, I'm an African American woman. I have been subject to discrimination all my life. I said, and who am I to discriminate? So if there is a woman who wants to come down, grant you, I would not fight. That's not my area of specialty. But when those young women came to me and wanted to fight, I didn't have a problem with it. That was their dream. And they were, as far as I was concerned, they were people who should have been allowed to have their dream, and that's what I did. So I put them on my card because I believe that in this day and time, it's equal opportunities. And I resent hearing from those who are in the power seats say, no, I don't like women in boxing. How dare they say that? Because now your audiences are now transitioning so that you have a lot of women who come to boxing. Now, are you going to deny them from paying their dollars to come and see boxing? I don't think so. So why should you deny them an opportunity to see a woman in the ring? And I think, unfortunately, the power brokers in boxing now, and some of them, were around when I was around and before, they still have that antiquated attitude about women not drawing the same kinds of crowds. I mean, it's not just boxing, it's basketball, it's baseball, it's all the sports where there has been a great hesitancy because they feel that I think in some ways we're going to take over, and we might do that too.
But you know something, Ms. Michael, I deal with facts. There's no empirical evidence that shows that women don't draw as well as the men. Don't tell me that Dana White is the smartest promoter on God's planet. He was able to promote Ronda Rousey, and she did great numbers. And
Yes.
she lost to a boxer, Holly Holmes. A lot of men, and I have to say this, kudos to Floyd Mayweather, who signed a woman boxer. She's 1-0.
Right.
Lou DiBella,
Mm-hmm.
historically, has always promoted women.
Mm-hmm.
Diane Fisher
Mm-hmm.
has always promoted women.
Mm-hmm.
Vernoca Michaels
Mhm.
has always promoted women,
Mhm.
and those are promoters. And Greg Robinson, Power Production,
Mhm.
has always promoted women. So, but the overwhelming majority of big promoters somehow did not put in women fighters. And we have a huge female population. A great percentage of the people that come to fights are women.
Yes.
So you can't tell me promoting women boxing is bad for business. That's just plain
It's not.
stupid, dumb, ignorant, asinine. It makes no sense.
Right, and it's just unfortunate that the people who are promoting these shows take that attitude, and I hope that within the next few years we can continue to pressure the establishment to make that change. It has to be made. It has to be made because we are now in a new era. We're not in the days gone by. We are now in 2016. So that we must move forward in integrating all of the sports, in particular boxing, so that women have the equal opportunity to get in the ring and do what they do best.
February 27th, Hank Lundy fights Terrence Crawford in Madison Square Garden. Alicia Slick Ashley,
Mm-hmm.
junior featherweight champion or super bantamweight champion, the oldest world champion, male or female, in pugilist history, regained her championship in October. Right? Why is she not on that card? She's from New York. She trains at Gleason's gym. She has a huge following. Why is she not on that card?
Discrimination. And you know and I know, if she were male, she would have been on that card and other cards, not only at Madison Square Garden, but throughout the country.
Cecilia Brakos, 27-0,
Mm-hmm.
17 knockouts. Welterweight champ, the only unified, undisputed world champ.
Mm-hmm.
The best welterweight champion, male or female.
Mm-hmm.
We don't see her
Absolutely.
on American television.
Same thing.
Makes no sense.
Same thing. Same thing. Same thing. Now, one of the things that has to happen is that we have to diversify not only in terms of the boxers, but we have to be more diverse in terms of people in power for boxing. I mean, it's no different than what we're seeing with the awards this season. That it's
The Oscars.
Yes.
I don't even pay attention to the Oscars.
People at the top who are discriminating because we know in that entity also that there were some of the best actors and actresses for this year who were African American or persons of color. Well, we know, as you've just stated, that some of the best fighters this year and in other years have been females, and yet those at the top still take that negative position. And until we break into the realm with greater numbers to be active at the top, making the decisions, that won't happen. But I think what, I remember when I first came in, it was 3 of us as women, promoters in the country.
Was Diane Fisher one of them?
Diane Fisher, yes. And another woman, Diane and I met, who was in, I believe, Florida. And one of the things that Diane and I did was we really, not verbally, but we really actively took a position that we would work together and that we would kind of stick together. And I would say that she and I had a very good relationship because we knew we were coming from the same position. Maybe she wasn't the same color that I was, but we were still both discriminated against in terms of the industry.
Well, it happens, and you can't tell me that Dana White is smarter than. Yes, he is. He recognized opportunity better because Ronda Rousey, what he's able to do, he's done with Ronda Rousey, one of the biggest stars in mixed martial arts.
Right. I mean, great. I mean, absolutely great. And nobody can take it away from her. Absolutely not. But yet, look at what she would have been making, and look at where she would be publicly if she were a man. You know, she would have been beyond the Wheaties box, as they say.
Right.
You know, and this really shows the discrimination that is still in the sports world.
It's going on. Let's talk about the Blue Horizon. June 6, 2010. I was at the show.
Mm-hmm.
The Blue Horizon closes.
That's right.
There have been speculations and people are saying why it's closed and Miss Michaels shouldn't have closed the Blue Horizon and
Well, let me say this. I started off by saying that it has been a hard road to hoe, and it continued. We've had little support, as you well know, from not only the boxing community, but the community at large. It takes a lot to run a venue like that. That is a building that is 54,000 square feet. I can tell you that not running the heat every day, but running it only for events, I was still paying $75,000 a year for gas then, not to mention the electric, the water, the beat goes on. And there was a point at which we just decided that it's time to stop.
Can I mount my soapbox, Miss Michael, to enlighten some of the fans?
Sure.
Because I've had people who box at the Blue Horizon who attended, well, the Blue Horizon shouldn't be closed. And I say, people, she shouldn't sell it. Why did she close it? And I have to explain to someone, we live in a democracy, a capitalist society. If you own something, barring any laws, you're allowed to close it and sell it and do as you see fit. The arena at 46th and Market was burned down, set afire by its owner. Didn't hear an uproar when the arena went. The Spectrum has held more boxing events than the legendary Blue Horizon.
Absolutely.
It closed. We didn't hear any of the moral majority jumping up and down saying, why are you closing? Let's have a march. We cannot close the Spectrum because it was the #1 boxing venue in Philadelphia. People are in uproar, and I try to explain to everyone. Maybe it's being a CPA, understand the numbers.
Yeah.
Boxing is a transitory sport, meaning you go into a hotel, you put the seats there, you pack up and you leave. You will not, it doesn't make business sense to buy a building solely for boxing unless you're having other events in there. It's a lot to maintain. It doesn't make sense. And to me, I applaud you that you were able to keep it so long with all you had going on in there.
Right. Well, you know, people didn't understand that. In fact, I think I had more boxing shows in there than any other promoter around, because you know most professional promoters have 4 to 6 shows a year. There were 15, and I would say to people, "Well, what do you think I do the other 350 days a year?" And they would say, "Well, oh, I never thought about that." But you know, you needed a lot of things going on. We did have parties, receptions, cabarets, concerts. We had voguing, we had fashion shows, you name it, we had it. But also, remember, when I put out on several occasions the calls for people to step forward and help us with our fundraising, I can count on probably one hand the number of people who stepped forward. They would always give me good lip service, but they never put their money where their mouth was.
I have to ask this question. Several promoters promoted at the legendary Blue Horizon.
Correct.
Pulse Boxing Promotion, Power Production, and a bunch of other smaller promotional arms. When the Blue Horizon closed, how many offers did you get from promoters to buy that building?
Nothing.
Why not?
Nothing. Because they did not want to tie their money into a building. But yet they were very resentful that I wanted to untie my hands with that. Even during the time that they had, I'm not going to mention any names, but you know who I'm talking about. They had an opportunity to lease out some space on a regular basis, but they wanted it free of charge. Nothing comes free in this world. Even for the when I said that I was closing and started working with Mosaic, the developers.
Now let's back up, Miss Michael.
Yes,
You own the Blue Horizon.
I still own
I'm
the Blue
just
Horizon.
trying to see, Miss Michael. I'm on social media, and the way people talk, we would believe that the city owns the Blue Horizon or the state owns the Blue Horizon, and you were just the manager.
Yes.
So,
Well, that was what people wanted to have other people
but
believe.
you actually own the Blue
Owned
Horizon.
it.
It is your property.
Owned it outright. That's correct.
Okay, and
And still own it.
and there's no law against you selling it.
There's no law against me selling. It's just like my owning my house. And when I get ready
just
to
have
own
get
my
it clear
house,
because I've seen discussions and the way people talk about the Blue Horizon, you think they had a financial interest in the Blue Horizon, but you own it.
that's right.
Okay.
There are actually three of us.
Okay.
Carol Ray, who is my business partner, the person who started all of this. And we have a silent partner, Carol Whitaker. And the three of us purchased it in '94, and we still own it. I happen to be the person who was, although I wasn't supposed to, I was just supposed to be the silent partner, but ended up because of the things that I was interested in doing and the boxing, being the front person and doing most of the business part because both of them worked. I just decided that I would give up my job. I wasn't getting a salary. I gave up my job just to do this out of the love of what I had for the legendary Blue Horizon. And so I did the day-to-day operations and running the learning center, the boxing, and the other activities there. Mm-hmm.
So the Blue Horizon, you own the Blue Horizon. Where are we at today?
Well, we are under contract for sale.
For sale.
And we have been working with the Mosaic, who I mentioned earlier, the developer, in developing that site into a 94-bed boutique hotel. Now, one of the things that I sought when I was seeking a buyer was someone who was going to maintain the essence of the facility and not tear it down. There have been too many losses in the African American community of historical institutions. And so my goal was to be able to at least save it so that we could have some remembrance of what it was. Now, when I started negotiating with them, I was going to continue boxing. But if you'll recall, when you mentioned June 6, 2010, what did that sign say? It said 65th special.
Right.
My 65th
I remember.
birthday. And if you'll also remember, I said I was going to retire when I got to be 65.
You
Now
told me
the two came together.
that.
The two came together. And I knew that I remember during the construction, I actually kept a count where every day I ran 50 trips from the basement of that building to the roof. Every day during construction. But I knew that I was not going to be able to continue to do that. And I wanted to retire while I was up and could enjoy retirement. I wanted to be able to do what I'm doing now. Here at the Robeson House, volunteering, giving leadership to a number of things within the city in terms of mental health, in terms of AIDS, in terms of domestic violence, in terms of the arts. And you have to have some energy to do that too. So retiring has allowed me to participate in other things and not be so fully consumed with just one thing as I was at the legendary Blue Horizon.
Going back to Mosaic, you sold it to I saw a lot of rumbling
Mhm.
about the Historical Society preservation.
That's right.
That was resolved by,
Well, I was never notified
okay,
that Preservation Alliance and the Philadelphia Historic Commission were attempting to make the entire building, but specifically just the boxing area,
okay,
they're historic. Now, if the building is historic, you don't just zero in on one aspect. You zero in on the entire building.
how was that resolved?
Well, it was resolved because, let me just step back and say that I went to that meeting, at which point they said, well, we sent the material to the building, and I said, but we never received it because, of course, after 5 years, your mailing limitation has ceased. And so, but I found it interesting, and I said, but my students, who I'm still working with colleges and universities, but two of the student classes from 2 different colleges were working on a project in relationship to me, and they said, Miss Michael, we found 1 million hits on the web for you, and we stopped because it just kept going on. And I said to them, I said, why was it that my students told me that they found 1 million hits? Many of them had my home address, my telephone. I said they were able to find out this information, but you all weren't. They had no reason for that. But I knew we were able that day to get a stay. But throughout all the meetings, I could look at people. I do very well in reading people, and I could see that we were not doing well. So we came to the final day, and there must have been 30 or more people around the table, and I still knew that we weren't doing well. And my personal lawyer was unable to come that day. She was ill. So I had a substitute, not a substitute, but another lawyer representing, and she was speaking on my behalf. And I just said to her, slide over. Let me speak for myself.
Okay.
And I became very dramatic and theatrical, if you want to say that. But I asked them. First of all, I wanted to know, had they seen it? Because all of the pictures that were presented were just like when we left on the June 6th, which meant that it was still in pristine condition. Now, being closed for 5 years, I see paint peeling, etc. All right? So I said, one of the things I did was to make them go back and take pictures of what it looked like today. The second thing that I addressed was this whole aspect of having 15 fights a year there and the other 350 days, which it was just mind-boggling, like, oh no, never thought about that, never knew about it, but if you had done your research and your homework properly, you would have known that. But more importantly, I asked a question of them. Does the legendary Blue Horizon rise to the level of Constitution Hall and the Liberty Bell in the city of Philadelphia?
And what was the answer?
No. No.
But you know, Miss Michael, to me, and I'm in social media, it seemed like selective hypocrisy because the argument was the legendary Blue Horizon is so important to boxing in Philadelphia. Philadelphia is the capital of boxing. But then the numbers doesn't hold through. The Spectrum had more fights than the legendary Blue Horizon.
Let me step back. When I bought the building, didn't know it, but when I bought the building, somebody after I bought it presented the city budget, which had in it $1 million, $2 million grant to match the state's $1 million. But I never got it. I came across the night before last and going through some paperwork where another proposal was put forth by the state making a grant of $8 million. But I never got it. And I would say to you that if you look at these other venues, they do get heavily supported by the city, the state, uh, major corporations, businesses. We never got that kind of support, and yet some of the outcry has been so stiff. I remember when I started my show on ESPN, it was interesting because I just wanted the city's highest level of official to come to the show, and that seemed to be problematic. So I'm suggesting that, we did get very different treatment than the other venues. Now, if this city really wanted to have this venue remain, it could have been done. It could have been done. I would say to you, if you looked at the amount of money that was represented in that room each time we had a fight, it could have been saved. It could have been continued. But nobody, not one person, let me repeat myself, not one person stepped up and said, do you need our help? Can we help you keep this facility?
Ms. Michael, we have a family home in Jamaica where my great-grandfather, he built a house.
Mm-hmm.
Across the street lived my great-grandfather, Thomas Hendricks, who was a slave. Now, their family members living on that land, the house is still there.
Mm-hmm.
If that house means so much to me, and they're going to tear it down, and it means so much, I'm not going to make an argument. Why can't we keep it? I will buy it, and I will preserve it.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard so much clamoring from individuals talking about legendary Blue Rival, and I have to remind people, listen folks, we live in America. It's a capitalist society. Somebody owns a property, absent of breaking the law. If they decide to close it, sell it, or renovate it, that's their right. Get that out your head. Stop telling people what they can and cannot do with their property. And with that said, Mosaic has a plan, but they're going to keep the facade or the front of the legendary Blue Rival.
I designated the facade.
You designated.
I designated the facade as historical because I always wanted to have that kept. Because what I did during my tenure was to bring the front facade back to the original state that it was in 1914. Now, the history of the building, as you know, but your listeners might not know, that it was mansions for the nouveau riche of Philadelphia.
Yes, it was.
And that's how they came about back in the 1800s. And then it was reconfigured in 1914 by the Loyal Order of Moose. So I happened to be down in City Hall one day, although they would not give me pictures of my own building because I owned it at the time. A young lady allowed me to see the pictures, and I began to continue a real deep hunt for pictures of my own because I liked what it looked like. And so that's what I transitioned it back to during the renovations. And I might add, I'm looking at buildings down in Center City that have the blue going up the buildings. We were the first in 2000. I want to make it clear. 2003, we had the blue lights going up the building. And so I wanted to bring it back to that state and did. I was able to even take the railings, and this is a unique story. They put the railings in. I had them to cut out the original railings, and I wanted them to be made to the exactness of the ones that were there that were being held together by paint. And I went outside one day and said to the person who was completing the job, I said, you're a quarter an inch off. He said, how do you know? I said, my eyes can tell me. I said, get out your measuring apparatus and measure it. And sure, they were a quarter of an inch off, And I said exactness, not near. But anyway, that's how I wanted the building to be brought back to life. And in fact, I was in my right because I did the original drawings myself because I didn't have the money at the time to hire the architects. Eventually, we were able to get a seed grant, and they took what I had put together. But I had an elevator coming in those front doors. But later on, I changed my mind because I found that they were the last of the rounded steps in the city. Now they had come in '37, so I was in my right to take them out. But you know, having learned so much about the history of the building, I really wanted to maintain it as close to what it was when it was renovated in
I have to ask
1914.
this question, Ms. Michael. You started selling the chairs and
Yes,
the Blue Horizon on the website,
yes.
and once again, keeping my ear or eyes to social media,
Mm-hmm.
it caused an uproar. She's
Absolutely.
selling the chairs, and let me back up again. When you bought the building, did the chairs, were the chairs a part of the deal?
Yes,
You own the chairs.
I own the chairs.
So if you
I own
decide
the lights.
if you
I own the
decide to
floors.
take the chairs out and have a bonfire on Temple's campus, absent any laws preventing you, it's your right.
It's my right.
So if you want to sell the chairs, and you are selling the chairs,
Yes,
that's your right.
right. But
Okay.
but not only is the public upset about it, but
It's not the public, Ms. Michael.
I've had officials.
A few mental midgets who probably, if they were in Africa in the 1700s, probably would be right there to ship buying slaves,
Mm-hmm.
had a problem with it.
Right, they did. And they wanted me to undo all of that. Well, I do have a company, Archer Seating, so anybody wants to have some, I really encourage them to call archerseating.com and see about getting
But those were your
seats
chairs. That you're selling
my
Archer
chairs
Seating.
to be sold.
People were upset that she's selling the chairs. I tell you, she's taking stuff out of the Blue Horizon. She's closing it. That woman only cares about money. Now I'm backing up.
Well, let me tell you how much I care about money, so they know.
I was laughing.
We all of that you saw my office and some of the other offices with that nice furniture that had been donated to me personally years ago for my business, and I brought it to the Blue Horizon, and in fact kept it from 2004 to 1994 to 2003 when we did the renovations. And it's interesting because all of the furniture, computers, all of that kind of thing went to 7 churches, I think about 9 or 10 nonprofit organizations. I didn't sell anything until the chairs came along. Everything has been donated to nonprofit organizations. My reason for that was because, just like with the Blue Horizon, I did not get in it to make money. I got in it to serve an underserved community. Now, of course, as you know, in 1994, that community was a very deprived community. And it was with the help of the Blue Horizon that we were able to do a lot of things. People didn't know, for instance, that we had literacy training and we had
A bunch of after-school tutorial
That's
programs
right.
for neighborhood
right
children in North Philadelphia. I
Absolutely.
came up there some.
community in terms of the goods that we had been blessed to be given. So I was not going to turn around and sell things like that had been given. I wanted to donate. And I would say, as recent as 2 weeks ago, I donated the railings that we had around the ring to one of the nonprofits here in Philadelphia. About 3 weeks ago, another nonprofit wanted to come, and they came and got, I think, about 100 of the folding chairs. Some of the chairs that you'll see downstairs are from the legendary Blue Horizon folding chairs. So that's what I'm doing. I'm distributing those kinds of things to the community so that the community will actually have something of the Blue Horizon, and it will be maintained not just in that one spot, but throughout the community in Philadelphia.
I wanted to switch gears, Miss Michael, and maybe something I should have done at the beginning. We talked about the Blue Horizon. We talked about Uncle Paul, the great Paul Robeson. But we didn't talk about you, how you grew up, your educational background, and your relationship with Dr. King, who was also a regular at your house.
Well, this is the thing. My father was a very accomplished minister, and my mother was an international missionary and also a concert artist.
Okay.
So I was brought up really throughout the United States, born in Cambridge, and educated in the various communities where my father pastored.
Okay.
However, when I got to be high school age, we were asked at the request of the Queen of England to go on the first international, interracial, interdenominational exchange. In coming back into the United States, we moved to Boston, and it was interesting because we came through Charlotte, North Carolina, back to Boston. And of course, in those days, you were always put back a grade. And my father insisted that I be tested.
Okay.
So after the third test, which I made the 97th percentile for the second time across the board, 93 the first time, 97 second time, 97 the third time, they didn't know what to do with me. So I ended up being sent to Harvard and MIT, math and science. And then when the civil rights came along, and by the way, when you asked me about Dr. King was educated in Boston University, as you well know. And he stayed with a woman who was a member of our church, and this is how the connection came about. And my father had been a confidant to most of the presidents up to that time. I guess you could call him like a mini black Billy Graham, who was also a friend of my father's.
Okay.
And so that's how the connection with Martin Luther King came about. And of course, as with other people, my father went on the marches with him and all. And of course, I have to laugh because my father was here and Martin was here at the time. And of course, you know, that was years ago. When we blow up people, just like I remember in Boston, people didn't have too much to do with the Kennedys because of Joe Kennedy. But my father was equal opportunities all the time, and he didn't believe in that attitude of segregating on the basis of anything. And so, having been a friend of the family, when Kennedy came into his own, this is what allowed my father to be a part of his campaign and his administration and all. And I must stop and say my father would have been so delighted in 2008 to see us get an African American president. And in fact, I must say too that we did furnish 5 of the offices here in Philadelphia through the efforts of the Blue Horizon office equipment and desk and all for that particular.
Ms. Michael, you're saying President Obama is African American? No, I thought he was Jamaican.
Yeah, how about that?
You didn't see him in Jamaica.
Yes. But we the first time, let me stop and say the first time, and I want to get back to other people, but the first time we did have John Legend come to the Blue Horizon to give a concert for him, for the young people, to encourage them to participate in the election and all. But to get back to where I was, after that march on Washington, I was so enthralled with what was going on that I convinced my father to allow me to go south to school.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that meant that I was giving up scholarships. You know, he was a minister now, not a high-paid minister, because he didn't believe in taking a lot out of the church. But he and a friend who owned the funeral home right down the street, right in the heart of Boston, made a deal, and that was that since he kept office hours every day in the church, that when he got a family whose person did not participate in activities of the church, my father would run down and give some spiritual message, and he would put so much money in a bank account for my education and my sister's education. So that's how we finished school.
Where did you go to school, Miss?
I finished at Livingstone College in Salisbury, North Carolina, right where the Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan was.
Okay.
And that was an experience. And then, of course, my father, having been a pastor, moved here to Philadelphia. So it was understood that I go to the University of Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So that's where I went to grad school.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's quite Ivy League.
Well, yes, but always still a member of the community.
Member of the community.
Right. I used to live right across the street here, and I would ride my bicycle down to the college. And then as I got a little older, I started riding my Cadillac down.
Okay.
And was stopped every day because they didn't believe I owned it.
Okay. Yeah. Well, Miss Michael, it's been a good conversation. I appreciate that. I think we have to come back and follow up. You're at the rope. You're actually taking care of Paul Robeson's house.
Well, I'm giving some leadership.
You're giving leadership.
Yes, until they find an executive or CEO.
Okay. Well, it's been quite a conversation. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Good.
Continue doing what you're doing.
Thank you. And George, it's always a pleasure
Same
being
here,
with
Miss
you.
Michael.
You know I love you.
Well, you gave me, you made sure I sat at ringside.
That's right.
And I appreciate it.
That's right. Because I knew that you would give an honest presentation
Thank you.
of what went on at the Blue Horizon. You have and you continue to.
Thank
And
you.
I thank you for that.
Thank you. Well, there you have it. Fight fans, historians, Miss Vernoca Michaels, owner of the legendary Blue Horizon, entrepreneur. She's at the Paul Robeson house, taking care of Uncle Paul and his legacy. Thank you for watching. Continue to support Boxing 396.
Sweet the sound that saved a soul like me. I once was lost, but